I took Dark Magician to locals. Practice makes perfect, however you can practice for countless hours on simulators and it will forever pale in comparison to in-person competition and events. Locals are the best place to take your theories and put them into practice. On stream, we moved away from the Runic Dark Magician variant and began migrating back to a more Dark Magician branded variant similar to the one that we've played in the past. After some additional tweaks off stream, I took this list to locals. A smaller turnout today. The usual 4 rounds of locals got cut down to 3. Round 1 didn't help us for content as we did receive the bye, which does suck. However, it just forces us to go more in depth for rounds 2 and 3. As die rolls are won and lost, we go into round 2. Our second round opponent is a fantastic player who is on Snake Eyes. We do end up winning the die roll, and after shuffling and cutting, we draw our first 5 cards. Our hand is below optimal in this situation. We open it with Dark Magician, Magician's Rod, Soul Servant, Infinite Impermanence, and Illusion of Chaos. We start our turn by activating Illusion of Chaos, grabbing Magician Souls, putting the Illusion of Chaos back to essentially send it again off Souls. We want to keep Dark Magician in hand. We normal summon our Magician's Rod to get our second copy of Soul Servant into hand to essentially get free value. We use Souls to pitch the one Soul Servant and then chaining the second Soul Servant in our hand to Timaeus, to stack Timaeus and then draw into Timaeus. We use Timaeus to go into the standard Dragoon line of play, and then we use the Soul Servant to get a free draw, and essentially the idea of this is to potentially draw into a fusion deployment or a branded fusion, which we didn't do. Our end board is essentially just Dragoon and Imperm with 1 card in hand, which isn't optimal. However, our opponent does lead with Snake Eye, with Normal Link Snake Eye Ash. I feel like this is one of the best targets to Imperm. So we do end up imperming the Snake Eye Ash to prevent my opponent from getting, Poplar and things like that to initially initiate the rest of their combos. After some thought, I believe our opponent leads with Wanted. I let it resolve in the thought that he might have Witch already in hand, which I think would be a poor negate. Now I have a decision. I know Witch is going to be the next play. I think he might have talents in hand. However, I feel like I can't let this Witch resolve, so we have to activate Dragoon to negate the Witch to essentially prevent him from having any additional bodies on board. That's kind of the thought process. However, we are forced to burn our negate. I do play into talents in this situation, which you'll see upcoming in the next few plays. However, our opponent does open the 1-for-1 in addition to all of this to extend his plays. The reason why we opted to negate the Witch, our opponent will proceed to do Snake Eye combos and things like that, but I'll just go into a quick reasoning as to why I opted to negate the Witch. Obviously, I felt like if the Witch was able to search Original Sinful Spoil, that might have been the play to negate the Original Sinful Spoil. My thought was, I put him on, you better have an extender in hand, because essentially when the Witch activated its effect, I didn't want it to stay on the field. Whether that's correct or incorrect, feel free to let me know. That's kind of the thought process behind it, assuming if he doesn't have an extender, he just ends on Snake Eye Ash, which I think is good enough to essentially stop his turn. There it is, the predicted triple tactics talents. He does take my Dragoon, and at this point he's just accumulated enough advantage. I have literally no cards in my hand because of our suboptimal opening. He will pop the Magician Souls and proceed to build a board with 8,000 points of damage. So I concede this game and we go into game 2. One thing that I absolutely love about this list is how easy the siding patterns are. We side out 2 Ash Blossoms and 2 Nibirus for essentially a secret village package with Metaverse. The reason for this is I know that he has Witch in deck. However, I feel like you put him on, you better have Witch in hand or you just can't play. So we end up opting to go first in our game 2, where we open a hand of Branded Fusion, Nadir Servant, Magician Souls, Illusion of Chaos, and Blazing Cartesia. We do start off our hand by getting immediate access to Dark Magician. We activate Magician Souls, pitching Dark Magician to the graveyard, and then summoning it to the field. We normal summon Blazing Cartesia and hard open our Branded Fusion, which our opponent does let resolve. We pitch our copies of Fallen of Albaz and Blazing Cartesia to summon out Albion. We go Albion Chain Link 1, our opponent does not have a response, so we chain Blazing Cartesia, fusing the Dark Magician and Albion into Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. Our Albion does resolve, essentially allowing us to make our second copy of Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, making any sort of hand traps that they have here void. We do start off by, we do follow up our play by activating Nadir Servant, pitching El Shaddai Apkalon, grabbing our second Fallen of Albaz, which then Apkalon will activate its effect, grabbing Shaddai Schism, which we pitch our unused Illusion of Chaos. Now, we could have activated Illusion of Chaos to stack our deck, but it doesn't matter because we weren't going to draw that anyways, as in the end phase, Albion does get our copy of Branded Fusion, and Blazing Cartesia gets added back to our hand. Our opponent starts off his turn with Dark Ruler No More, immediately turning off our Red Eyes Dark Dragoon and our Blazing Cartesia. So what he does here is he normal summons Snake Eye Ash. I know that when Poplar gets added, I am shotgunning Schism, so that because Poplar is forced to special summon itself. So he goes Poplar effect, I chain Schism, summoning our El Shaddai Winda, blocking him out of any sort of special summonings. Unfortunately here, our opponent does end up searching the field spell, the wanted field spell, and he unfortunately does have the second copy of Dark Ruler No More, turning off our El Shaddai Winda, which essentially means we don't have any further interruptions. He is free to pop off. As I sit there and watch my opponent go into full Snake Eye combo and slowly start deassembling my board, I essentially have to start thinking about how am I going to crack back. I know I'm not going to die because he hit me with the Dark Ruler No Mores. I do have a Fallen of Albaz in hand along with the Cartesia and Branded Fusion in my hand. What he ends up doing eventually down in this combo is he ends up going into Dark, reviving my Albion, and Albion will essentially be sent back into the graveyard from his combo, giving me a free Branded Fusion next turn. Whether that was a misplay, I don't think it mattered to him because I thought he was in a position I think he thought that he was in a position where he was going to win no matter what whatever my crackback was. The idea here is, okay, how am I going to essentially play through this board? What he does here is something exceptional. What he does is he ends up sending my Dragoon to the Spell and Trap card zone, which he then later revives with Flameburge. His end board is essentially Flameburge, IP Masquerena, a 2-mat Appaloosa, and my Red Eyes Dark Dragoon before I start my turn. Going into my turn, the top deck was a Duality. Now, I'm staring it out on this board and I'm beginning to analyze what my lines of play are. I have Duality, Fallen of Albaz, Cartesia, a Branded Fusion with Schism still on the field. Now, my thought of here is if I can get rid of the Appaloosa and if I could bait the most threatening card on the field, which is Dragoon, I might have a chance to win because I do have ways to play around this board. I start by activating my Shaddai Schism, hoping that he would negate it with Dragoon, and if he doesn't, it doesn't matter because I think I win in this situation, or I think I'm beginning to start breaking his board if this Schism does end up resolving. He does let it resolve because he doesn't think that the Schism is going to be threatening his board. So I do summon El Shaddai Winda, and in the same effect, Schism does send a dark monster from his field to our graveyard, which just means that he isn't able to negate the Schism. I do end up sending back our Dragoon, which is immediately the biggest threat nullified. What we end up doing here is essentially, okay, my thought process here is I need to normal summon our Cartesia and proceed into battle phase. His Appo is only on 2 mats along with IP Masquerena. This essentially forces the IP Masquerena to make a link summoning and getting it into SP Little Knight. Now, the thing here is he isn't able to activate Flameburge's effect because Winda does lock him into that one special summoning, which is really, really strong. However, SP Little Knight being summoned with an extra deck monster is still a threat, banishing our El Shaddai Winda. Now, Cartesia does try to fuse with Winda, however, he does negate with Appaloosa. However, this does make Appaloosa big enough to beat over with Blazing Cartesia. So we opt to continue into battle phase, and we end up swinging with Cartesia into his Appaloosa, dealing with one less negate essentially. In main phase 2, we activate Branded Fusion, sending Fallen of Albaz and our copy of Timaeus the United Dragon, which essentially does allow us to summon Albion. Now what we can do here is we go Albion effect. What he opts to do is he activates SP Little Knight, attempting to target itself and Albion. We chain Duality, sending Albion to the grave to summon Sanctifier. Here Albion resolves, sending our Fallen of Albaz and our Dragoon into a Lubellion. Now there is a very specific reason as to why I did this. Sure, we can summon Mirror Jade and deal with the monster. However, it can't be destroyed by battle or by card effect because of IP. So we opt to shuffle back our Dark Magician and our Illusion of Chaos to summon Master of Chaos. Master of Chaos brings back Dragoon as a free negate, and then we will proceed to activate Master of Chaos's effect, sending both itself and Lubellion to the graveyard to banish that SP permanently. Here, what we have is Sanctifier, Cartesia, and Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. We proceed to the end phase, essentially grabbing our Blazing Cartesia back from the grave. And at this point, our opponent doesn't think that he has enough gas to break the rest of this board with a Dragoon negate, a Sanctifier, summon back. There is just way too many interruptions, along with a Blazing Cartesia effect that's very much alive. Our opponent realizes that he isn't able to play through this and concedes the game. Looking back as to why we ended up summoning Master of Chaos instead of Mirror Jade, I felt like having Master of Chaos summon back our Red Eyes Dark Dragoon was just a little bit stronger, as Red Eyes Dark Dragoon provides an actual negate on our opponent's turn. Mirror Jade, as good as it is, it wouldn't be able to essentially deal with any sort of follow-up my opponent might have, because we were going to be forced to use the banish effect on the SP to avoid SP being a threat next turn. So essentially that's kind of the idea that we used Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and when our opponent attempted to activate a card in grave for any sort of follow-up, we do end up negating it with Dragoon, which does solidify the win for us. And that's kind of the thought process behind Master of Chaos. I thought Master of Chaos performed very, very well in that scenario, and it was definitely the correct play. Now we proceed into Game 3. Siding into Snake Eyes for Game 3 was actually relatively simple. We just side in our entire side deck pretty much. We side in 3 Cyclones, the entire Shaddoll package, which does work phenomenally into breaking boards. We side in the 2 Nibirus, 2 Ash Blossoms, along with the Bestial Magnuma and the Druid Swarm for the IP banish, along with the Linkuriboh banish. We pretty much side out a lot of engine. We side out the 3 Nadir Servants, 3 Dualities, 3 Village, Metaverse, Schism, along with 3 engine slots just to fit everything in. We side out the 1 Soul Servant, 1 Rod, because we won't be seeing one or the other, along with the 1 Fusion deployment. That's kind of the thought process behind going into it. We are going to essentially try to stop them along with breaking their board. With how exhilarating that game 1 and 2 is, we didn't even look at the time and we literally had a minute left. Our opponent ended up proceeding to do some sort of Snake Eye combos. Thank goodness this timer did end, because we opened, I believe if my memory serves me correctly, Timaeus, Dark Magician, 2 Fallen of Albaz, and 1 Bestial Druid Swarm. We didn't even get to see our top deck, but it doesn't really matter. So thankfully, time was called because I wasn't going to break that board anyways. We end up going into round 3 of the day, and our opponent is going to be Vanquish Soul. In the meantime, I just want to give a huge shout out to my locals and everyone there. You guys are absolutely amazing, and thank you for treating me like family. Our third and final game is against Vanquish Soul, against a really, really good player and an even better personality. We do end up winning the die roll because he does open a Snake Eyes, and our opening hand is actually pretty decent. We open our copy of Shaddoll Schism, Magician Souls, Dark Magician, Branded Fusion, and Triple Tactics Talents. Now I feel like if we can get Triple Tactics Talents live in this situation, it could be very beneficial. We activate Magician Souls, pitching our Illusion of Chaos, and summoning Magician Souls. Here we opt to send our Shaddoll Schism because I don't think it's needed in this situation, and I don't think we are going to be getting into window. What we end up doing here is we activate Branded Fusion, which he does end up ashing, and we respond by activating Triple Tactics Talents to draw 2 cards. We drew into Fusion Deployment and Nadir Servant, which is some of the best draws we could ever have. We activate Deployment, summoning our Blazing Cartesia, and then proceed to activate Cartesia's effect in order to fuse with Magician Souls into Grand Guignol, the Dusk Dragon. Grand Guignol in this situation, what it will do is it will send Albion to the graveyard for potential follow-up, and then we followed up by activating Nadir Servant, sending our copy of El Shaddoll Winda to the graveyard, and essentially grabbing our Fallen of Albaz. When Winda is sent to the graveyard, we are essentially able to recur El Shaddoll Schism from the graveyard and add it back to our hand at no discard, which is really, really decent. In the end phase, Cartesia will add itself back to hand, and Albion will get us Branded Fusion. Now, in this situation, our opponent leads off with Fenrir, and as he proceeds to go into his combos, I think no matter what, I am relatively safe in this situation. Unless he goes to a very significant OTK line, it might be difficult to come back into it, as I'd lose the game in that situation. However, I feel like there's enough follow-up and I have enough engine in my hand that if I'm able to survive this turn, I can win the game, right? So in this situation, I'm just essentially waiting for him to commit. He proceeds into battle phase, which I think was the correct play to play the game relatively slowly. He goes Fenrir into our Grang and Yol, and Fenrir banishes the Grang, and then it Rita clears and pokes me for some life points. He attempts to summon one of the Kashtira cards, and I chain Schism to the summoning, which he does have Bell for, unfortunately. Ghost Spell does stop Schism. However, in this situation, I think I'm okay because I know he can't really kill me, and pass his turn. Here what we'll do on the follow-up is essentially we drew into Magician's Rod. Magician's Rod will grab us our copy of Secrets of Dark Magic because, you know, we have the Fallen of Albaz in hand along with the Dark Magician. So in order to pretty much essentially play around any hand traps or things like that, I feel like it's mandatory to get Dragoon on board, and even though we are going to go pretty neg in making it, I think it's still a relatively viable option. So we go Secrets of Dark Magic, sending Dark Magician and Fallen of Albaz to make our copy of Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. Here what we'll do is then we'll chain Shaddoll Schism and summoning, we'll activate Shaddoll Schism, not chaining it, to summon our Winda and sending his monster to the graveyard. In this situation here, the idea is okay, he will activate an effect and we will negate it with Red Eye's Dark Dragoon by sending Magician's Souls. His Fenrir will then target our Winda to banish it, which in hindsight we probably should have popped the Fenrir first. However, he did have a quick effect. It doesn't really matter though because he doesn't really have any resources left in hand. We activate the Branded Fusion. He immediately scoops because he knows that the game's going to be over then, because we pretty much go into a Mirror Jade line, a Sanctifier line, or even a second Dragoon. So GG to us, we win game 1. Post side, our opening hand is Magician's Souls, Soul Servant, Branded Fusion, and Nadir Servant. Going into this game, I sided in a lot of going second cards. We sided in all our hand trap counts, along with the Shaddoll package, to essentially help us break this board. Vanquish Soul doesn't end on a lot, but a lot of their interactions are very layered. Kind of like a baby version of Snake Eyes, obviously not as strong, but it's that same layered level of interactions that, you know, make it very difficult to predict what they're going to do and how they're going to play out their lines. Obviously going second, we are faced in seeing a board with Rock, Vanquish Soul, Fenrir, that's a joke, along with 3 set cards before we even start our turn. Obviously, I know that Summon Limit, Anti-Spell are very prevalent in this format, so it's cards that I'm very, very scared of. And what we end up doing here is, obviously, he has 2 cards in hand. Our opening hand can allow us to essentially have a lot of play, but I do know this player is pretty adamant on playing Summon Limit. And what I do is I ended up shotgunning Branded Fusion. This is obviously the incorrect play if you are playing at, I think, high level tournaments and things like that. Obviously leading with Branded Fusion is incorrect. However, I am playing around Summon Limit because I did see what this player was playing in previous rounds. And sometimes that knowledge is relatively helpful. And as you see in the video, we just hard make Dragoon. And essentially, you will see that I am right. However, I do get hit with a Super Poly, and he discards another Super Poly, meaning he opened up both of them, fusing away our Dragoon for his Mud Dragon, and there it is. The Summon Limit, I very much predicted that would be in his deck. We are locked under Summon Limit, and unfortunately, we can't really do anything. We have used our two special summons, or two summonings in general. What we opt to do is essentially just attempt to draw a card with Soul Servant Engrave. We use Magician's Souls to pitch our Dark Magician without summoning it, because you can do that, to banish Soul Servant just to get a free draw, hoping we can draw something that can potentially break this board. We do drop our Nadir Servant. Nadir Servant will essentially send our Grang and Yol in the hopes of him pretty much, if he does summon something on his turn, it's another layer of interruption. However, I just don't think that I can play. I don't think there's anything I'm going to be able to do under a Super Poly and Summon Limit along with a full board. So I end up passing turn on relatively an empty board. He proceeds to kill me in this turn. Going into game 3, we opened relatively unplayable. We bricked, I'm not even going to show it, but we opened up Magician's Rod, Fallen of Albaz, Secrets of Dark Magic, Triple Tactics Talents, and Triple Tactics Thrusts. Unfortunately, all we needed to do was hope that he had a hand trap on the Magician's Rod so that our talents and our tactics, our thrusts and our talents was live. He obviously didn't deem that Magician's Rod being a threatening card. Who would have guessed? thus just ending on our turn on a Magician's Rod with a set Soul Servant. He proceeded to kill me in that turn, and unfortunately, that's just sometimes how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is. Before ending the video, I just want to say that the deck profile used in the video will be uploaded at a later date. It is relatively close to the deck we built on stream. And speaking of stream, expect a few streams from me in the upcoming weeks. I am very excited about some ideas I have going forward. In addition, I just want to thank everyone for watching, and I strongly encourage everyone to go out to their locals. I think it's truly a really great experience, and I have nothing but positive remarks from my local shop, along with many others. So in the meantime, I just want to wish you guys an amazing day. Thank you for watching. Bye.